because of the power of other. My courage was rooted in collaboration. It is rooted in ongoing collaboration. And my courage was curated in the crucible of curious conversations about what deepens our message as speakers in the world today. So today I'm going to take off my entrepreneurial jackets and speak to you as a soulful conversation about how we impact the world as speakers, how we build the power of other. You see, a mere 4 years ago, I didn't think I had a story to tell. I posed outside this poster at Tallinn, Mind Valley, Estonia, and it said, "Be extraordinary." Well, I could not have felt more ordinary and less extraordinary if I tried. I just quite liked the fact that my blue outfit matched the poster. You see, I hadn't owned my story at all. But speaker after speaker on the Mind Valley stage, 2 weeks of intensive high-level global speakers about everything in life, the things they don't talk about at school. Speaker after speaker poured courage into my heart. But there was one young speaker in particular. Her name was Nicole Gibson. She strode up to the stage in her ripped white jeans and her white tackies, and she stood and sat down at the edge of the stage with her legs dangling over the stage without a single slide in place. And she said, "Who here feels lonely?" She proceeded to tell us a story of her at her loneliness time of all, when she was battling severe anorexia, and how that transitioned into her becoming the youngest ambassador for mental health in Australia to the Australian government at the tender age of 21. Nicole Gibson is now a global visionary. But that day, she peered into my soul and whispered to me that maybe I had a story to tell, that I had to own my story. You see, I hadn't owned the fact that I'd been a public face of a company in the construction industry and built it up for 20 years at that point. From a shed on a field in Amalgam, and this is the only picture I have of that first little shed, to now an award-winning company that's been featured on radio, on television, and in entrepreneur magazines. I hadn't owned all the awards we'd won over the years because I thought that would be arrogance. I compared myself to all the other companies. We only had 150 employees. Other people had 2,000. Comparison is the thief of joy. The truth is, I hadn't owned the enormity of the lessons that 25 years have now brought me. And it's only now that I speak about my entrepreneurial journey as the lessons and the people that got me there, the teams that got us to that point. That is a testament now to the power of other. But you see, I hadn't owned so many things. I hadn't owned that I'd undergone a massive personal transformation from a workaholic, bloated, stressed couch potato at 52 who'd battled severe eating disorders, yo-yo dieting, extreme up and down, to now an ambassador for integrated living. Somebody who has a loving relationship with food. Now moving is part of my identity. And the only scale I have in my house is this one, for lowering the luggage. Because my identity is no longer tied to either my shape or a number on the scale. It is tied to something far deeper. 1 year later, I went to a further immersion at Mind Valley in Croatia, Pula. I changed on the outside. Yes, I'd undergone that massive transformation, but on the inside, I was still broken with demons in my head, demons of self-doubt. A whisper had just become a louder whisper. And there was this incredible speaker that strode up to the stage yet again. She had on a floral dress and khakis. And she stood on the stage without a single slide in place again. And she did not mention one of her remarkable 24 books on intuition and many other areas of life. And she held us captive for 3 hours with 2 short breaks. There were 1,000 people from 53 different countries sitting in that auditorium. And you could have heard a pin drop. She spoke about the barking dog in our heads, the barking dog that creates fear, anxiety, stress, and overwhelm. But for me, above all, a lack of courage. And my husband turned to me and he went like this in the auditorium, because he knew that that barking dog had dominated my entire life for 60 long years. 1 week later, we were walking in northern Croatia in this charming little town, this little medieval town on the top of a mountain with cobbled streets. And you can see I'm an arty creative. I'm always wearing funky earrings. And I finally owned that story too. I am an arty creative. And I saw this necklace hanging on this beautiful glass mannequin. And it was the symbol of a barking dog. And I turned it over, and on the back was an ancient timepiece. And I thought to myself, am I going to spend the rest of my life being dominated by the noise of the barking dog? Or am I going to use my time on earth to make a difference? And so began a journey not of the outer shape, but of the inner dimension, a deep spiritual journey of the soul. And so I started unpacking this journey I'd been on, and I started to understand this thing that I now call identity intelligence. You get EQ, you get IQ, but this is what I call IDI, your understanding of your unique reason for being here, your unique essence. And I started to understand that so much of my unconscious patterning was based on my beliefs and my habits, and how I had changed those and transformed those to bring about a different identity. Because as we all know, 94 to 96% of our behavior is based on our unconscious patterning. And I started to realize that I had changed my beliefs from my old beliefs to new beliefs. I had changed entirely the habits of my life. I now live and breathe Atomic Habits by James Clear. It is part of my identity. It's part of who I am. But it took 10 days of sitting on a cold concrete floor in a silent meditation retreat to truly understand that my vision and my why was the most important thing. And that goals were incidental, and that goals could be like a diet, because if you don't meet them, you fall off the wagon and you head for the fridge. And I never want to be that kind of person again. And I realized sitting on that cold concrete floor that my vision and my why had to be attached to something deeper, something beyond me, something beyond this physical entity. It had to be not attached to outcome. That was truly living and walking in faith. And so I went one level deeper to try and unpack the essence of this model, to understand how emotions drive behavior, and how my emotional eating had been as a result of stuffing the pain down my throat because of the turbulence in my home, of understanding where the limiting beliefs came from, where those voices came from, and how I'd internalized them. To understand that knowledge and skills was just a small part of wisdom. And that self-worth was at the essence of wisdom. this messy thing I called wisdom. And the essence of the deepest core of it, the spiritual core, like we have a gym, a core that we develop in our gym, my spiritual core became radical self-acceptance, the kind of self-acceptance Ian Hutton talks about, radical self-acceptance for who I was and what I brought to the world. It became an understanding of radical reality, that is getting feedback to understand how could I grow every single week as a speaker. And it became finally radical accountability for my life as a speaker. And I realized that manifestation is not wishful thinking. Manifestation is both being the chiseler and the chiseled. It's taking action. And wisdom is a messy thing. It's not neat and tidy and linear. And so I began to understand that, yes, consciousness is a spiral. And I love Charlotte's beautiful image of her gold spiral. And when I first saw that model, I thought, yes, we're not walking a ladder. We're sliding imperceptibly up and down a ladder. Not a ladder, a spiral. But here's the thing. My consciousness looks more like the beautiful cover of Helen Nicholson's book on mindfulness. It's convoluted, it's messy, it's chaotic, with the odd light bulb moment that leads me back to a spiral of understanding. You see, when I started out as a political activist in my 20s and later on in my 30s, I wanted to change the world. But I was both insular and invisible. And as Shelley Walters said at this convention, you can't change the world when nobody knows about you. But when I became an entrepreneur, I became more visible. But I still battled imposter syndrome because I thought, what will people say if they know that I don't work in Excel spreadsheets? What kind of leader will they think I am? And it was only when I morphed into speaking and writing and mindset coaching that my whole life started to make sense. My whole journey of my uniqueness and my belonging finally meshed into an understanding of how my voice could maybe help others in the power of other. You see, equality is everybody getting a pair of shoes. Diversity is everybody getting a different type of shoe. Equity is everybody getting a pair of shoes that fits. And those are the challenges in our country, South Africa. But acceptance is understanding that we all wear different kinds of shoes as speakers. We all bring a different energy, a different message, a different tonality, different nuance to the world. But belonging is wearing the shoes you want without fear of judgment. And these are my belonging shoes, bought in Amsterdam on the way to Tallinn, Estonia. Because I finally realized that I could be playful and radiant and spiritual. And in fact, in being lighter, life became so much easier. And my husband looks at these old pictures of his first wife, and he sometimes goes, Ellie, who was that? I don't know her anymore. And that's the greatest tribute to my change, not in the outer shape, but in the inner energy. And it was only when I truly understood the work of David Hawkins that I could understand that as long as I was living in the guilt and shame of all the things that I'd done wrong in my life, all the people that I felt I'd let down, the cringing moments that I really battled to forgive myself for, it was only when I understood that transcendence was getting beyond that into a level of courage, and that only courage was the bridge to living in love, to speaking in love. You see, I thought living in the culturescape was the voices of other people. my background, the messages I'd internalized. But what I didn't realize was that I had taken the voice of the barking dog and made it my own. And I had amplified it so much that I was drowning in its cacophony of sounds. And it was only when I awakened to the fact that I had to recode myself, reframe my messages, reframe my journey, that I could even begin to impact the world as a speaker and as a thought leader. You see, it wasn't until I realized that this body I stand in today is merely what Robin Pullen says is called our earth suit. Merely our earth suit. It was only when I truly understood that chipping away the self-doubt, the self-flagellation, and the constant anxiety was a commitment to courage and creativity. And that in messing that sculpture, in destroying that outer element of the sculpture, was my beautiful destruction, to own who I was truly meant to be. And that finally, in that process of chipping away and being chiseled, both the chiseler and the chiseled, only then did I really understood the power that my mess has become my message. You see, Mind Valley gave me the wings to believe that there was such a thing as wings. But it was the Speakers Association, the PSASA, that grew my wings. You see, I believe, as Nicole Gibson says, there are no coincidences. There are only co-incidents. And it is no coincidence that I spoke just after Max Moyer at the last convention, because he spoke about identity. And he spoke about identity as your irresistible difference. And it is no coincidence today that I'm speaking after my amazing mentor, Alison Weihe, who has given me the faith to believe that I had a message. Because for me, forgiveness, faith is forgiveness articulated in trust and hope. Faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. We are not speakers. We are ambassadors of love. And the more we chisel, the more we are chiseled, the purer we can become to be channels of understanding, to build curious conversations of the soul. And so my anthem is, you raise me up so that I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. That is the power of other. Thank you.